Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the TTSC Talent and Technical Solutions Show. We are so excited to have our very own Jerrold Thompson with us today as our guest speaker. And of course, my lovely partner, Miss Adrienne Somerville. Uh, today, we have a very exciting guest, Mr. Jerrold Thompson. I just want to talk a little bit about his background before we get started into our show. Jerrold is the founder and managing partner of 99 Solved Problems. Now, this is a solutions agency that helps clients solve problems, remove barriers, and make informed decisions to transform their businesses. And they offer business consulting, coaching services to help clients achieve their business goals. Jerrold was also the chief branding officer and as an agency president and founder, he led a passionate and talented creative team specializing in customized business solutions. I know Jerrold had his company, Thompson Branding, and that's what we are here to talk about today, branding. And Jerrold is going to answer some questions about branding and give us his knowledge and insights. Now, when I met Jerrold many years ago, over 20 something, maybe even 30 years ago, I don't know how long ago it was, but Jerrold was in entertainment. So I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about Jerrold's entertainment career.
Yeah.
So Jerrold is a highly respected and accomplished entertainment industry veteran. He started his career as an intern at Motown Records in the 90s, and he has managed the careers of many successful artists, producers, and songwriters. And that goes on to the list is long, but we'll start off with Destiny's Child, 50 Cent, TLC, Busta Rhymes, Janet Jackson, the Jacksons, Raven Simone, among others, Jill Scott, and should I go on and on?
Those are some big names.
Those are some big names. Yes, they are.
Please.
And we need, the Bible says, give respect where respect is due, right? Give honor where honor is due. So Jerrold is honored today as our guest. In 2008, Jerrold led a small team of executives to become the first person to ever A&R an album by a U.S. presidential candidate, which was Barack Obama, with the Yes You Can CD. And that was a grassroots movement featured Stevie Wonder, Sheryl Crow, John Mayer, Kanye West, John Legend, and so many more. So, Jerrold, we'd like to welcome you to our show today, and thank you for taking your valuable time out just to speak with us today on the topic of branding.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for that very nice introduction. And just for clarity, I don't manage many of the people that you mentioned. However, I have worked with them creatively in terms of A&R, which is basically working with them in studios, working with them developing songs, and finishing up recording projects. So just a quick correction on.
Okay,
well,
please clarify. We don't. I don't want to see you in court anywhere.
No, absolutely. I do not manage Destiny's Child. I do have some wonderful awards for working with them and things like that. So that's and it's been a pleasure to work with everyone that you've named. So that is
absolutely. And I remember when I met Raven Simone through you, and I worked with her for a couple years. Down in San Diego with the parade, and she was very, very, very nice. And her mother, Lydia, was very nice to work with her.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. A lot of rich history.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Indeed.
Absolutely. So, Adrienne, would you like to get started with the questions for Jerrold?
I would. So I am very fascinated by the topic of branding. So I was definitely one lobbying to have Jerrold join us this evening. There's so much to branding that you see on social media today with our young people, with major celebrities. Years ago, I used to see, people have marketing teams and marketing efforts. So I first want to start off with just simplifying and understanding the difference between branding and marketing before we even get into the branding discussion this evening.
Yeah, I'm really glad you actually asked that, because so many people mix those two things up. So, the main difference is that branding is focused on building your identity. It's focused on defining who you are so that not only you're clear on who you are, what you're not, who you're not, and it allows you to kind of create actual boundaries. So it's just like, I like to speak about brands the same way you speak about your own personality. So you kind of click with certain people, and there's certain people you don't click with, right?
Yes.
Your brand is very much like, it is very similar. There's certain characteristics and qualities about a brand that lend themselves to alignment with a target audience or a customer. Whereas there are also certain audiences and certain customers that, your brand is just not for them. It's not going to align with them. The values of your brand don't align. But brands are very much like people in that regard. So, I think you really can't go wrong when you try to build a brand the same way you would think of raising a child, almost, in the sense that, there's certain values you want to instill in your child, and there's certain, or even not just a child, a pet for that matter, a dog or a cat. There's certain, there's certain things you want, there's certain ways you want your pet to behave, and there's certain ways you don't. There's certain things you want them to do. You may not want them on your bed. Some people do, but
Exactly.
but you may not want them on your bed. You may not want them eating out on your china, but some people do, So it's less about right and wrong and more about defining your actual values for your brand. And it allows you to then target specific audiences and customers that would basically align with your values and with your outlook, your approach, the type of products and services that you'd offer. So it's really important. And I always recommend, and most professionals would recommend, that you really figure out your brand first before you start trying to market. Because if you think about it, how do you really market something to the best of your ability if you don't really define who it is, what it is, and why it is, right? Understanding your why for your product is really important. So when you look at an Apple or Nike or Adidas, you can then reverse engineer that and understand why is it that they're so dominant in those spaces. They're dominant because they're very true to their brands, right? So a company like Apple is very true to being simple, which is a big part of its brand attributes, being simplicity, minimalism. So when you look at their devices, look at their offerings, they're very streamlined. Few buttons, if any, touch screens and things like that, things that are very minimalist and simple. So that said, the main difference though between branding and marketing is branding is very identity focused, and it's about building an identity, building trust. And people trust you when they understand who you are, right? When they don't understand who you are, they don't trust you, right? So you have to, and the way that you build trust is by delivering on a promise. So every brand should promise something. Okay. If you don't have a promise to deliver, then it's going to be very difficult for you to deliver on it, because what are you really delivering on? Have a promise for your brand and deliver on that promise. The more you deliver on that promise, that's what builds the trust between you and that audience, or you and that consumer. So
no, I love that.
And
That's
the last part of it though is, so marketing is about promotion and selling. So the main difference is, one is about building your identity, the other is about building how you're going to creating campaigns and different activities that are going to allow you to promote and sell your products and services.
I like that.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you. I've always wanted to ask that. So, because people use them, like you said, as if they're synonyms, and they're really separate and distinct. And actually, one is the precursor to the other, like you need to do one first. So that's good for our listeners and our viewers to know.
Yeah, it's important. I deal with a lot of clients who do it the reverse way. They have a product, they have a service, they jump out and they just start marketing and promoting it. But they've failed to build who they are, what they stand for, what they don't stand for, and they have not established those brand attributes and the values for their brand. So essentially, if it's a ball that you're trying to sell, you have options. You could buy a ball, or you could buy a Wilson ball, or you could buy a Champion ball.
Oh.
But the difference between the two is not going to be the ball. It's going to be the brand. It's going to be what that brand stands for. So if that brand stands for excellence, then you're going to go with the one that stands for excellence. If the brand has no brand identity, you're probably not going to buy it unless the pricing is so cheap that all of a sudden what's more important to you is the price than the actual quality.
I
Gerald,
love that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned branding attributes. Could you just go into a little bit about those? I mean, when people hear branding, they're just thinking, oh, maybe stamping a name on something or maybe creating a logo. So
Right.
how many attributes are there under the category of branding?
So there's not a set amount of attributes. It's much like a person, just like I said. So there's some people who are very layered and they've got a lot of different attributes. You know,
very complex.
Yeah, they're very complex. And then there are others that are not, and they're very straightforward. Like there's some people that if you hang out with them, they're going to be like, "Hey, how much does it cost? If it's expensive, I'm not going." That's it. There's nothing else to really discuss. Whereas others would be like, "So where is it?
Oh yeah.
What is it? What's the vibe?
Yeah.
What kind of people go there? Are the people cool? Are they? So when it comes to building a brand, you, the owner, and the person who is building this brand has to decide what attributes are important.
Oh, okay. I get that.
So once you decide, well, what attributes are important. So if you decide that you sourcing products that are safe and environmentally safe, if that is of the utmost priority to you, then that attribute becomes a big part of your brand, right?
Right.
So when you take a brand like the Honest brand, that they claim, and I won't say that they're not true in that claim, but they're a big part of their brand is that attribute. We only use organic and we only use safe products. We only use this. So you can buy diapers, but when you buy that brand, you're buying it from a brand that believes that everything has to be safe. Everything has to be tested. Everything. So once that's established as part of your brand, every product, every service, everything you do should align with that attribute.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what allows a consumer or an audience to trust your brand.
Yes, absolutely. I remember recently, since I work in strategic planning, I had to lead an organization into creating what they call a value proposition statement.
Yeah.
And they basically they had to come up with a statement like that would kind of describe what their value was to the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we use what they call personas, like you said, like people, right?
Yeah.
And we had to describe, well, what are those attributes of your organization? How do you bring value to the overall division, so people will know you by those different attributes? So I can kind of correlate that with the branding.
And that's a big part of building a brand. Understanding, if you haven't figured out what your value proposition is, which, for those that are listening, the most important thing you can do when it comes, I'd say, outside of defining your brand, is understanding what value you offer your audience and your customer. If you can't articulate what that value is, then you need to take a little more time so that you can. I'll just put it that way. So, once you can really define what your value proposition is, which is, hey, what is the value that you're offering your customer? Is it efficiency? You're saving them time, you're saving them, money, you're saving, is it a saving that's the big value proposition, or is it ease of use? Is that the value proposition? Is it highest qualities? Highest quality product, is that the so when you look at something like Rolls-Royce, their value proposition is that this is the finest vehicle that you can get in. It's not about, okay, this is cheap or this is going to be less expensive. No, this is going to be the pinnacle of luxury as it pertains to automobiles.
So don't worry about the price. Worry
No,
about the experience
the
of
price
that
is not, the
luxury.
price is of no object, and it is for a very particular audience. It is
Right.
for an
Right.
audience. And once
Right.
again, that goes back to the persona. So we call those buyer personas.
Okay.
So once you lay out who your buyer persona is, in this case, you're talking about the top,
Like those
5%,
sheiks you
or
were telling me about earlier today.
wealthy. You're talking about the wealthy, right? So,
Right.
so it's really important to understand who your audience is and who your buyer is, because you're wasting time trying to sell a Rolls Royce to someone who can only afford to buy a Toyota.
Right. Right.
It's just, it's not going to work. You know what I'm saying? And often that's why it's so important for you to take the time to build your brand properly, so you know who your buyer is.
Right.
And part of building your brand properly, it is defining who your buyer is, and you do that by creating buyer personas. Yeah.
Right.
And you also can't really properly, I won't say you can't, but right along with creating that buyer persona, you really do have to define what your value is, what your value proposition is, what you're offering. What are you proposing as value to someone, right? Just to break down what the value proposition is. So, because a lot of times that's a scary one for people, like, well, what is the value proposition? There is a set way you do. There's a few exercises you can use to create a value proposition. You can Google it; it's very easy, and you'll see it.
Yeah, I actually led a group at the National Institutes of Health on creating their value propositions.
Yeah, it's important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is very important. That way people know your value and they know what you
and to be able to articulate it. And that's why it's really important when you go through those exercises to actually develop a value proposition statement, so that when it's literally going to be somewhere in the first paragraph of your website, or somewhere in that first paragraph of that deck,
exactly
have that value proposition. People need to understand why this should be of value to them. So yeah.
Is that different than the mission or vision statement?
It is. It's totally different. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, not necessarily totally different, but it is different. It might there's some things that might be in your value proposition that they certainly will relate to your vision, and it certainly will relate to your mission.
Right.
But it may not be things that are directly from your mission or your vision.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. So we live in a world that is maximizing social media. How has the branding world been affected or impacted by the use of social media?
Arguably, I would say that social media has become the most dominant way, and probably the most effective and cost-effective way to market, promote, sell, position a brand, build a brand. It literally has allowed, it's kind of evened the playing field for a great many, where that becomes a bit of a, I won't say question mark, but where that's confronted with a challenge, however, is when it comes to algorithms. So while you may have 1 million followers on TikTok, the algorithm will determine how many of them actually see your content. Okay. And it used, when it first kind of, Facebook and so forth first started out, they were very loose with the algorithms. So if you had 10,000 people, you almost had access to 10,000 people. If you posted something, almost 10,000, your followers actually saw what you were posting. But due to, I don't want to call it, say, greed, I guess it's just their business model. Some people call it greed. But due to their business models, where advertisement is usually the driving force, clearly, if advertisement is your driving force, you want to shift everyone on that platform to some sort of advertisement, paid advertisement, that they are buying into to be able to have access to their followers. So, as well as to be able to have access to people who don't follow you.
Right.
So what you find yourself doing is boosting posts and paying for different media buys or advertisement.
To boost things too, right?
Yeah, to be able to reach not just people that are relevant to your content, but people that are your very friends. So it's kind of sad. That's like, okay, so I got to pay to reach grandma.
Yeah.
And I still may not reach her if she don't meet certain criteria boxes.
Meet the algorithm, right? The algorithm criteria.
We kind of go into social media with the mindset that, hey, I have 10,000 friends, so I know I'm going to reach them, right? When I post, they're all seeing that. And the reality is probably 3 to 5% of the people that, if you have 10,000 people, then you're lucky if even 1,000 to 3,000 people see it.
Wow.
You're lucky.
Wow.
So so it's you're looking at somewhere around 3-5% or so that they're actually going to see that post, unless you pay for advertisement. If you pay for advertisement, it boosts the range of people based on your criteria of people that you'd like to reach. It boosts that range beyond, per 1,000, per 5,000, per 10,000, per 100,000. It just gets more expensive as to how many people you want to actually be able to reach with your content. Yeah,
I like it.
Very
That's good.
nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So Jerrold, I want to ask you, what made you want to get into branding?
You know what? As you mentioned earlier, I started out in entertainment on the creative side, working with musicians, artists, and working for the record labels, working as a music manager, and I managed music producers and songwriters. And from doing all those things over the period of years, I was pretty much sucked into marketing, because marketing and identity and building brands and building artist identities in particular.
Right.
Without an artist identity, you just really have a difficult time marketing and promoting your music.
Right.
So it's really important to understand, if you're dealing with a Jill Scott, well, what does Jill stand for? What is, I know she's got a great voice. I know she's got great songs, but who's her audience? And what does she really stand for? Is she trying to speak to the same audience as Chris Brown? Is her audience different than Chris Brown? And where is her audience? Are they in church? Are they in the strip club? Are they where are they?
Right.
So and that's really important to understand. But understanding each of those things has everything to do with who that person's identity is.
So, and that means it's important to have a unique brand, right? So that yours is set apart from others.
Absolutely. The more you can what we call it differentiation, the more you can differentiate who you are, in this case as an artist, or going back to branding, the better you can differentiate your brand from the next, the more you'll stand out, right? So going back to that example of a tennis ball, for example, you've got options. Just like I said, you could buy a Wilson tennis ball, 3 to 6 of those in a little can, or you can buy some off-brand. Because you see Wilson at the Olympics, and because you see it at Wimbledon, and because you see it on major tennis players' rackets, and you see it on their headbands and things like that, you're going to build an affinity and a trust for that brand. So that's why it's so important for them to pay those millions of dollars to those top-notch athletes to wear their clothing, to use their tennis racket, to that's why Wimbledon will pay Mercedes will pay to have their brand on the tennis net, because it's alignment with a specific audience that they're looking to market to.
Right.
And it also establishes, hey, if this is high quality, then I'm aligning my brand with that high quality of tennis. Okay, if this is the top level of tennis, we're the top level in automobiles. So it's all about brand and alignment when it comes to things like that.
So being the A&R
Mhm.
for the different record companies.
And can you define A&R, Michael, for
Yeah.
our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, so A&R stands for artist and repertoire.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken,
That is
Gerald.
correct. That is correct.
It stands for artist and repertoire. So being the A&R rep for a music company it's kind of like a natural progression then to go into branding, right?
Yeah, it is. And you know, diving, a lot of people hear A&R and that's kind of like this little glorified position. You're a scout and you fly around and you sit in clubs and you sign talent and all that stuff. And all those things are true.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you look at someone like who's really under fire right now, like P. Diddy, or
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he's built his career being an A&R, and then
Oh, okay.
then a record label. He started out at Uptown as an intern, then went
Mhm.
head of A&R
March.
at Uptown under Andre Harrell, then had his own label, and has had uber success, since.
Mhm.
But he's one of the ones who's kind of, like I said, kind of had a similar trajectory to mine in the sense of starting off as intern, going in as
Mhm.
A&R, doing, and so forth. I
Mhm.
kind of segued into brand marketing because once again, when you talk about artist and repertoire speaks directly to someone's identity.
Right.
Mm.
And it is a big part of how an artist, you can have the Four Tops, you can have the Temptations, you could have, the Spinners, you can have all, but what makes each of them different?
Mm-hmm.
They're all 3-4 man groups, or you can have Boys to Men, and you can have Shy, and you can have all these
Mm-hmm.
groups, but what makes them different? They each sing, they each are incredibly talented, they each are vocally talented, they each are good looking, all those things are
Right.
great, but what is it that makes them different, one different from the next? In some cases, it's not the product or the service. In this case, singing. Sometimes it's not about someone being able to sing better.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just about maybe their look or their
Mm-hmm.
or
Style
approach
or
their
Right.
style, right?
Right.
mm-hmm.
So that's why it's really important. And when you deal with art, many of them are rather flamboyant and they're over
Right.
the top and this and the other. Why? Because they're trying to differentiate. They're trying to stand
Exactly.
out. It's important. If you're a rapper, there's a lot of rappers out there.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Lots of
So
rappers.
how do you stand out among the sea of rappers out there?
Right.
And and it's not just as simple most times as just being a better rapper.
Right.
That's
Right.
part of it. Or better yet, basketball player. How do you stand out as a basketball player when
Mm-hmm.
you've got all these amazing talented basketball players? So so it's really important to establish an identity. Someone like a Michael Jordan was able to early on establish his identity just by the way he moved. He moved unlike anybody else. The way he dunked was so sleek and elegant and different than
Mhm.
anyone else that
Mm-hmm.
without even thinking about it, he was able to develop a brand that was iconic.
Right.
Just by his very nature of his own ability, but everyone can't do that. Everyone,
Right.
most of us have to kind of figure out what our thing is going to be and kind of define that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are others who just have a natural X factor about them. Michael Jordan was one of them. So
How can is it possible to have more than one brand?
it is.
It is.
It
Okay,
is.
good.
It
So
is.
I wonder about that. Like you see, and I'll just pull on a celebrity that we'll say P. Diddy, you've got clothing, you've got music, you've got Ciroc, like you've got TV shows.
Mhm.
How do you manage all of that and stay true to that core brand? Or yeah, how
Mhm.
do you do that?
Well, let me use something that's a little more. It might be even more simple to digest. Um, Go back to Apple. Apple is a computer company at its
Mm-hmm.
core. However, they delivered on their computers, the promise of their computers, so well that they were able to get us to trust them being a telecom company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The only reason that on this earth that you would even consider buying an iPhone is because you trusted the quality and the performance and the delivery that
Mm-hmm.
they had on their computers. Because at that time, Nokia, Motorola, Ericsson, all of these other telecom companies, giants, were in the space and have much more credibility and trust than Apple. Apple, who wasn't even in the telecom business, right? So the point that I'm making is they not only brought a new product to the market, they brought a new brand to the market, in the name of iPhone. Okay. So there's the Apple brand, and under that Apple umbrella, they started a new brand called which is like iCloud, iPhone,
Yep.
this, that,
iPad,
yeah. So,
yep.
and so on and so on and so on. So essentially the product is the iPhone, but the brand is anything with an I in front of it.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So, and that's why they were able to kind of trademark that thing and kind of do it a little, differently. But they built a brand off the the little lowercase I, right? And began to roll out different product lines with that brand. Okay. So that might be an easier example to see.
Yeah.
Like
that's good.
The puffy, the deity, the musical one gets a little different because, while there are brands, it wasn't so much of an umbrella thing. Like with Apple, it's more like you can see how it all stayed within the company.
Right. The whole ecosystem of Apple.
We got this, we got that. Yeah. So
yeah, it's like its own ecosystem. Apple is.
Yes. Yeah. You had iTunes, you had you had all these different things that they did that were all brand consistent, and you knew what it was once you saw the I with it. It's like, oh, okay, this is iTunes. That's music. You had iMovie for a while. Now it's just movie or whatever. But they've rebranded and they've started to kind of remove the I off of things now. But
yeah. How difficult do you think it is to rebrand?
Depends. In the case of Apple, they are a lifestyle brand at their core and not just a tech company. People buy their products because they suit their lifestyle. So from that standpoint, they're truly a lifestyle brand. People swear by their products and in all different areas, not just in business, but in if you're going hiking, or if you're in sports, or if you're wearing a watch.
Exactly.
So this is a company that is not a watchmaker, but yet you trust the brand enough to go buy the watch.
Exactly.
So that's how important brands are. Like when you do such an amazing job, and I'll give a really great example of a brand that did such an amazing job. Google. Google is just a search engine, but it did such a good job of branding that it became synonymous with searching. Okay.
Yeah.
So it
you
actually
just say Google it. It's like a
people
verb.
don't even say search for it anymore. They say Google it.
Yep. It's just a verb. We say, did you Google it?
So, and another good example of that is like Kleenex, which is tissue. At the end of the day, there are a lot of tissue companies, but one of them was so good at branding that it became synonymous with now, hey, could you pass me a Kleenex? And it may not even be a Kleenex brand. It's just it's swapped out with tissue now, So, but that's the power of branding, that if you do such a great job at it, that you can become so dominant in the space that your brand becomes the face of the actual function itself. That's how powerful it is. So imagine if Nike became synonymous with shoe. They've never made it to that degree of power, but that's the equivalent of Kleenex or Google. So,
but you've had to make that little transition, Jerrold, because you were doing A&R. And then I remember you were working for the school with the Camerons.
Yes.
Then you're doing Thompson branding.
Yeah.
Now you're 99 Soft Problems. I mean, you really reinvented yourself. So how hard was that?
It's always been challenging. But I've always had the part of my brand, personal brand, is that I don't really believe in barriers. I don't believe that I believe in knowledge. I
Mhm.
don't necessarily believe in degrees.
What about
Into
networking?
that.
Does your network play a
Mhm.
role in how you've been able to maneuver and reinvent yourself?
Absolutely. The network plays a role, but I think the biggest role player is yourself. You have
Mhm.
to decide whether you're going to allow yourself to be um, put in a box, or whether you're going to
Mhm.
allow yourself. Like I was told at a really early age that I wasn't really good at, I didn't really know music.
Mhm.
Mm.
Because I didn't go to school for music, and I didn't learn how to, to notate, and I didn't learn how to play an instrument. So I
Mhm.
was self-taught.
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
but before it was over, I, the guy who didn't know music has Grammys and platinum plaques and all types of.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
I say that for inspirational purposes of
Mhm.
anyone else who's been told no, or told that you can't. Um, I'll testify you can. You know what I'm saying? But you
Yes.
Mhm.
have to be willing to do, what it takes to achieve it. So, like I said, I was definitely told, like, you're not gonna go anywhere in music. And and I look back and I'm like, wow, I've gone places that most have never been with music.
Mhm.
I'll show
So,
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've been really blessed. So, and the same thing with marketing. I graduated from University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana with 2 degrees,
Mhm.
neither of which was marketing.
Mhm.
By the way,
Mhm.
neither of which was marketing, neither of which, this is long before branding was even a
Mhm.
thing. But I graduated a communications degree and a degree in political science pre-law.
Oh, me
And
too. I didn't
actually,
know that. Yep. That's
yeah.
awesome.
So all of the marketing experience came from sheer will to learn, understand, dissect, and conquer that space.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
wouldn't say I've conquered it, but I will say that I have certainly learned to the degree where I'm beyond competitive, and I'm able to beat out many of the agencies for the clients and the work that I get, and deliver better results than a lot of the agencies. So, um, and that was my focus. Wasn't,
Mhm.
Mhm.
I got to a stage where, and let me make sure I'm clear on this. I don't. Um, I think it's great to get the degree.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
was going to
Right?
ask
By
you to
no, yeah, by no
elaborate on
means am
that.
I saying don't get a degree.
Mhm.
What I am saying is, don't let having a degree, define whether you do or don't achieve your goals.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay, meaning, if you, and there's certain fields that you have to have that degree, first of all.
Mhm.
So you're not going to go start practicing medicine without, what I'm saying, without.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to be clear on that. That is not what you should do.
Right. Not
Uh,
legally.
no,
Right.
no. Branding and marketing, however, are things that, it's great if you have a marketing degree. It's great if
Mhm.
you go and get a degree for that. And if I was younger, maybe I would, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
But I'll be honest, because of my work experience, I've been placed in such a blessed situation where I've been in the rooms with some of the top marketers, been in
Mhm.
the space with the heads of companies and CEOs, and the top brass at so many companies for over 30 years, that it has sharpened my tools to be able to step into the arena and fight for the opportunity to market,
Mhm.
or fight for the opportunity to brand products and services for clients. And it's always a fight. It's never, I always have to earn it. It's not oh, okay. I think now it's less of a fight, but
Mhm.
early on it was like, okay, well, first you start with, well, what projects have you done?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Who have you worked for? This and the other.
Yeah.
So early on, it was a bit difficult, kind of changing gears from A&R and management to branding and marketing. Even though I've been doing it all these years, for many years as an A&R, I've had to sit in every marketing meeting we had. every single one and contribute.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost it would be impossible to not learn marketing. You know,
Right.
But you did it though. You did. You sat there. You grasped on to those skill sets. And you've moved fluidly throughout that industry. And I've always known you as someone to be diligent, someone to be very intelligent, to grasp onto ideas and run with it, but more diligent as well. Because I remember you inspired me to work out because I remember when you were posting all your little workout videos years ago, and you had your shirt off, showing your little chest and everything. And I was like, "Look at Jerrold, he is doing it." And I think I even sent you a text, and you were like, "You could do it too. Just go to the gym."
Get it.
But that was probably part of your brand, right? The fitness.
You were
part of my personal brand, and you know, there's your personal brand, which everyone has one. They may not be aware of it, but once again, all a brand is your identity. So there are those that have exciting identities. There are those that have identities that are not as exciting. Just when you look at companies, there are companies that are not so exciting, and then there are other companies that are super exciting. Brands are very much like your own personality. And I would treat them very much similar. And that's part of the success that I've had, is really understanding the relationship between your personality and your brand. They're you tend to them the same way. Okay.
Did you discover your personal brand by happenstance? Did you do some lonely work? Was it a journey for you? I know we have some young people, some probably entrepreneur spirited individuals ready to take on the world, pretty much in their infancy, and still probably trying to figure out, oh wait, now I have to create a brand, but wait, there's a corporate one and then there's a personal one, and how do I distinguish between the two and build both? Do I do them sequentially and parallel?
So, and those are good questions. So I believe, and others may tell you differently, I believe your personal brand is different than your corporate brand. I believe your professional brand, and in some instances they're one and the same, but I always encourage people to keep them separate, even if they both have very similar, a lot of similarities. I believe, like for I'll give you an example. If you're Chris Brown, right, your personal brand and your professional brand are almost one and the same, right? However, he does have control of keeping the two separate, meaning how he deals with things personally does not actually have to be how he deals with things professionally, right? However, he chooses to kind of let them kind of be the same, right?
Blend in.
Now you can take someone else who might be a little different than that. Like say someone like Jay-Z. Jay-Z, on the other hand, he has his personal brand, and then he's got his business brand, right? And the two are not exactly the same. One is more business-like and more, much more about, following the rules, so to speak, corporate and so forth, but yet still having an edge and still being, characteristic of Jay-Z without necessarily being the personal brand, which might cuss you out,
Right.
Whereas the business brand won't do that. It will dismiss you.
Right.
But that's the difference. The personal brand, you might get cussed out. The business brand, you will not get cussed out, but you might be dismissed and pretty much put on the blacklist, right? Whereas if you're Chris Brown, you're gonna get cussed out on either one. Right? Either one of you getting cussed out. So that's the difference right there between your personal brand and how people. I'm just giving two examples of how people will deal with a personal brand versus another person would deal with their personal brand versus their business brand. So,
and you have to know your audiences with that, because that could potentially damage some relationships and ruin some opportunities.
It absolutely does. And that's why Jay-Z tries to be very careful, even though he's getting pulled into some stuff with this Diddy thing, but he tries to be very careful with his personal brand versus his business brands like Rock Nation and some of the other brands he's got. So he keeps them separate. He doesn't treat Rock Nation like I'm Jay-Z and Rock Nation moves and does the things that Jay-Z does. No, he understands that that is a company and it is a brand in itself. And he does want it to have certain attributes that are, that are consistent with him, but he doesn't want it to just be like, hey, this has to look, feel, and act the way I would act. No, he's wise enough to say, hey, these are two separate brands. Okay. And
how important is it to have someone like you on the team, though, Jerrold, to really, it seems like it could be a game changer.
I mean, it can, when it comes to understanding your brand and understanding your why, because a big part of understanding your brand is understanding your why. Why do you do what you do? Why do you do it the way you do it? Why, why is what you do important? Why, having some real answers to those things has everything to do with being able to properly define your brand. And where people like myself come in is we help you figure that out. We help you stay true to who you are. We help you define who you are. We help you define who your brand is, what your brand stands for. We help you understand those values and how to articulate those values across your different channels that you're dealing with. Because we're all dealing with different channels, whether it's a social media channel that you're dealing with, or whether you're dealing with actual in-person live events, or if you're dealing with actual communication directly with people in your organization. There's internal communication, there's external communication. Your brand should be conveyed across all channels. It doesn't stop when it comes to internal or stop when it comes to external. It is your brand. So if your brand says, hey, we're about the environment, then it doesn't stop when you go inside your organization. You should still be about the environment.
You should still see those green and compost and all that stuff inside the organization.
That's where a lot of companies get in trouble because they don't understand that. So they want to go out externally and talk about, oh, we're about saving the planet, and oh, we give all these millions of dollars to such and such. Then you go inside the organization, and there's nothing sustainable in the organization. Everything they're just throwing stuff, the toxic stuff, everything. So when I worked for James Cameron and his wife, they had a private school, and it was really important for them to. They made it clear that our brand is not just an external one, meaning internal. And they were about the environment. They were about saving the planet. Right. So that meant that if your child was going to go to this school, they were not going to be. They didn't allow plastic one-use containers on campus. So if you had Starbucks coffee, you would be greeted with something to pour your coffee into. I'm dead serious. Before you go rolling on the campus, it was they didn't care if you were a parent coming from Starbucks or not. You're gonna need to come on this campus with, sustainable products. So, and that's an example of a company that understood the assignment, which is like, hey, you can't talk one thing and then walk another. Because it hurts your brand.
Where I work, we create value statements and operational principles. So that those operational principles will align to those values that you say your branding is. So if you say is part of your branding, if you say we are going to respond to our customers, in a timely fashion, our operational principle would say something like, we will respond to customers in a timely fashion. Therefore, we will, respond to every email within 24 hours. We will call someone back. We will acknowledge them. So putting those operational principles into effect will help your organization live.
I mean, when you don't have like SOPs that actually align with your brand, that's a big mistake, because essentially you're setting yourself up to build distrust in what you do. You're telling the public, hey, you should be doing this, and this is what we believe in. But then when they pull the hood back, they see you're not even doing it yourself.
Right.
It's like telling someone, listen, you shouldn't eat sugar. But then you're saying that publicly, but then they come visit you at the office and it's donuts and coffee with tons of sugar. And it's like, wait a minute.
I know.
What's going on here?
So
Right.
weren't the Camerons vegetarians as well?
Yeah, they were vegan. The school's a vegan. It was the first vegan school in the country. And
So did you have to eat vegan when you were over there?
I didn't have to, but once again, I believe that, the brand is important. So I actually did go vegan during the time that I was working. Yeah.
Okay.
I was vegan during that whole time and kind of remained vegan for quite a few months after, but eventually kind of decided it wasn't the lifestyle I wanted to.
Gotcha.
It didn't align with your brand.
Right.
Didn't align with where I was at that moment in my brand anymore.
So said, I want me some steak.
I kind of went in a different direction. So, but brand alignment is really important. Being able to align not just internally with, align your brand internally with your operations, but also align your brand with your message. Align your brand. Like, it's one thing to say, hey, I believe in this, but then you don't walk that. It's another thing to say, to put a brand message out there. We believe this, but what you're saying you believe in is not aligned with what you're actually doing. So that's where we call that brand confusion. And a lot of people are guilty of that. You have people that'll jump out and say, hey, they're protesting, they're posting on social media, this and that and the other. That's wrong. Don't do this, such and such, you don't deal with women this way. And then you look on their timeline and it's like, well, wait a minute. How are you dealing with women right now?
Right.
What is going on? So it's we see this every day. We even see this playing out, and this is controversial, but I'm gonna say it anyway. We see this playing out right in front of our eyes right now with what's going on in the Middle East. And I'll just leave it there. There's a lot. You say one thing, and not just you say one thing, then it's got to stand across the board.
I love that you talk about that.
I don't want to get any deeper than that. You can fill in the blanks on some of the things I'm referring to when I say that, but you can't say one thing about one group
without being shut down. Period.
Well, no, I want to make it real clear as to who I'm saying without saying any names. But you can't say that it's wrong when this person or this country does it, but it's not wrong when this country or that person does it. Right. And you can just take it from there. I'm gonna leave it there.
Okay.
I like that you talk about the trust factor though, because that's very important. And we don't want to lose that as individuals when you step into your brand and in corporate spaces or wherever you're leading. I think that spirit of trust you have to remain true to you, right? In your brand identity, but also in how you lead. And I think that's very important that you have a brand that is trustworthy and you remain true to yourself in terms of trusting.
Absolutely. And the only way to efficiently, and to build a brand the right way is to deliver on promises, which is that's the actual thing that builds trust. So every time Apple said, hey, we've got the best, simplest device, and they delivered on that promise, they gained more trust. Every time Nike says, hey, we're the ultimate apparel, and they deliver on that promise, they get more trust. So
I love it.
Yeah.
So I have two questions for you, Jerrold.
Sure.
The first one is, this show, it goes on to a STEM platform where people log in from different areas of the STEM arena. Okay. And so I wanted to know if you could give us, like maybe say an 18-year-old was going into college and wanted to get into branding, maybe start off, maybe his first week. What would be maybe the first 3 tips that you would give this person? And then the second question is totally different. It's related to 99 Solve Problems. What your organization that you work with, what percentage of that organization does branding?
Got it. So first thing in terms of tips, you have one of the most powerful things that the world has ever seen, and that's the phone. and the laptop or computer. There's so many resources in terms of branding. Just literally go to Google, put in branding. What is branding? Who are some of the top branding agencies out there? Just do a little research, and then definitely Google what is brand architecture. All right, and you will get everything you need to know if you just Google that. What is brand architecture? In terms of what our company does, we've got a few different talented people that work with the company, and I lead a really small but passionate team. Our main focus is on just making sure that we solve problems for our customers and our clients. We get approached with clients that are in the energy space, people that are approached in entertainment still, people that are in CPG, consumer packaged goods. And we once again, just like we were talking about our brand, my brand and the brand of 99 Solve Problems, we're more of a solution agency than we are about the brand, because people come to us with all kinds of problems.
Right.
And it's not just about a logo or just about, how do I build my brand or how do I sell it?
They need a book cover.
Yeah, or book cover, all kinds of solutions. So we start with the problem and then we work backwards from that. In terms of who does what, it always starts with me in terms of laying out the basic strategy of how we're going to provide that solution. And then it goes from me to either Raheem or Robin. Those are usually my right and left. And the two of them will usually take it into different project managers from there.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. So you do more than branding, right?
Yes.
You're into solving problems.
Yeah, we're all about solving problems, because I mean, we can give you brand solutions, and we can give you brand attributes. I mean, that you might be looking to define for yourself. We can give you those kind of. We can help you with those things, but ultimately, what people are looking for is a solution to whatever their problem is, whatever that pain point is. So we focus more on delivering the end result, so that we don't miss that. Because, and the last thing I'll say is that, a lot of times companies focus on giving you what they think you need.
Right.
I try to focus on giving clients what they need, and not get lost in what I think they need, but what they actually need. So
yeah. And what's your website again?
It's 99 Solved Problems with an S.com.
Okay, great.
So before we wrap up, and I know Michael's going to close us out, we have about 3 or 4 minutes. I always like to ask this question: having traveled your journey, like you said, a blessed life, a lot of learning and knowledge and motivation and tenacity to push through those doors to prove yourself. What would you tell your younger self?
You know what I would tell my younger self? That it's not the end of the world, because often at every stage of my journey, there's always been a moment where I felt like, if this doesn't happen, my career is over, or if this doesn't happen, then I can't make it here. I've now kind of wizened into the understanding that that it's not the end of the world. If something that you are trying to make happen does not happen, your world's not over. There's tomorrow to still make it happen, and there's other ways to make it happen. If tomorrow is not the day, then there might be yet another way to make it happen. I've always told people that you can either go through the front door, the back door, the side window, or what I famously would say, kick a hole in the wall.
I like it. What a powerful ending. Definitely one of my favorites, Jerrold. It's been such a pleasure. I knew you would be amazing. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. This has really been insightful. Over to you, Michael. I'm on cloud nine because I'm passionate about this topic. You can see I have lots of notes. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Once again, Jerrold, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we'd like to thank all of our viewers for joining us as well. We do have our program once a month, so please join us next month on our Talent and Technical Solutions show, and we look forward to seeing you again. Until then, be blessed.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.